Beyond the veil lie forgotten stories, cities that should not exist, whispers echoing in the dreams of the mad. Welcome to Whispers Beyond the Veil, the city that should not exist. Chapter 1. The Maps of Unremembering. Elian was a middle-aged merchant, with calloused hands and eyes dulled by the sun of the caravans. He sold fabrics, amulets, and spices across the misty valleys of the north, where the sky always hung low and faith slept beneath layers of superstition. No ballads would ever be written about him. He was a man moved by habit, like rivers that never choose their course. His life changed the day he rummaged through the scorched remains of his grandfather's old attic and found a chest. It was charred, its hinges melted, the wood turned to ash. Only one thing had survived intact: a tightly rolled parchment, bound in a strip of leather etched with symbols that danced before the eyes like tongues of flame. The map it revealed showed familiar regions: the River Rain, the Willow Hills, the Forest of Morven. But at the center, where every map ever drawn showed only barren land, stood a city. A circle of towers, concentric streets, and an ancient symbol, a spiral folding into itself. Written beneath, in crimson ink, was the name Your Column. Neither Elian nor the wandering cartographers of the College of Vask, nor the elders of the Guild of Knowledge had ever heard of it. No legends spoke of it. No tales. No mentions in any known tome. But from that day on, the map never left him in peace. He woke in the dead of night with red ink throbbing in his eyes, the name engraved on his tongue, and the more he tried to forget, the more he felt something calling. When he finally left, he abandoned everything: his cart, his goods, his life. He took only a cloak, a water skin, and the map pressed to his chest like a borrowed heart. The wind, that day, blew from no known direction. Chapter 2. The Shadow's Border. The journey became a string of nameless places and unnatural silences. Elian passed through abandoned villages with doors nailed shut from within, hills where trees grew backwards, and streams that flowed against the current. The map seemed to shift before his eyes, sometimes revealing paths that didn't exist, other times erasing entire lands he remembered walking through just days before. On the 7th day of travel, he reached a shattered stone bridge hanging over a bottomless chasm. There, a man awaited him. He did not speak, he did not move. He wore a black cloak and a mask of cracked wax. In his hand, he held an unlit lantern. Elian stepped closer, and only then did the man lift the lantern, showing it empty inside. Then he pointed to the chasm, and finally to Elian himself. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. To cross, he had to give up something of his own. Without knowing why, Elian drew from his chest a small leather pouch. Inside was a pendant, his last memory of his mother. He offered it to the figure, who accepted it and threw it into the abyss. The lantern ignited. The bridge reformed with a whisper of stone reassembling, as if the world itself had accepted the offering. Elian crossed, and behind him the figure vanished like mist in the sun. Beyond the bridge, the land changed. The sky grew higher, but less real. There were too many stars, and some of them moved. The air smelled of iron and forgotten dreams. He knew the threshold had been crossed. There were no more traceable borders, only the promise of a city no one remembered. Your Column was waiting. Chapter 3. The City's Apparition. The sun stood high when Elian reached the plain marked on the map. He expected a clearing, perhaps ruins, a heap of stones. Instead, he found only gray, motionless grass. The silence was so complete that he could hear the beat of his own heart like drums in an abandoned temple. The city wasn't there, no walls, no towers, only sky and field. Frustrated, Elian set up a small camp. He gathered wood, lit a fire. As dusk fell, he began writing in his journal. "I've traveled for days chasing a mirage. Perhaps your Calum is just the ravings of an old man, or perhaps I am." But that night he dreamed. He dreamed of a city that breathed. Its walls bent like flesh, its streets moved like intestines. A deep chant, more a wail than a melody, filled the air. Shadows walked between the buildings, but they were not alive. And the spiral, the symbol from the map, was everywhere. On doors, on floors, etched into the sky itself. When he woke, the fire was out and the air smelled metallic, like blood, and the city was there. Your column stretched before him, still and black. Its twisted towers defied the laws of architecture and gravity. Some rose straight into the sky, others curled around themselves like serpents. Elian felt no fear, only an unnatural calm, like returning home after a long absence. He took a step forward, and the city welcomed him. Chapter 4. The Living Streets. Elian's footsteps echoed like muffled drums along the city's winding streets. The black stone slabs beneath his feet pulsed faintly, as if a massive heartbeat beneath the foundations. There were no human sounds, only a distant whisper, like the rustling of dragged garments or a breath held too long. The houses had no doors. The windows opened inward, revealing only darkness, and that darkness seemed to watch. Some buildings shifted imperceptibly, altering their tilt whenever Elian looked away. He soon realized the streets weren't fixed. He would walk in a straight line, only to find himself in places he'd already seen. A triangular plaza with an obsidian fountain spewing sand. A shattered arch floating in midair. An alley ending at a wall covered in broken mirrors, each reflecting a different version of him. That's when he saw the first figure. It was tall, slender, cloaked in black veils that moved as if stirred by a wind Elian could not feel. It had no face, only a smooth, gleaming oval. It glided with an otherworldly grace, never touching the ground. It watched him for a long time, then slowly raised a hand, pointing north, toward the part of the city that looked older, darker. Elian followed the gesture, unable to do otherwise. Each step felt like it pulled him deeper, into a vastness greater than the sky. In his journal, he would later write, "In this city, I am not the one choosing where to go. It is the streets that walk through me." Chapter 5. The Temple Without Doors. The path indicated by the creature led to an avenue of broken columns. Each bore the same symbol, the spiral. There were no buildings nearby, only a vast clearing, and, at its center, a massive structure of black stone, without windows, without openings. It was the temple. Elian recognized it without knowing how. The silence around him had become tangible, almost liquid, and with each step he felt as though he were walking through a layer of dream. There were no doors, no visible entrance. But as he approached, one of the walls began to dissolve, like smoke scattered by the wind. Inside, the light had no source. It was a dim, even glow, as if the stone itself emitted a lunar radiance. The walls were covered in writings that slowly shifted, rotating counter to the flow of time. Every symbol he looked at seemed to turn into a memory. Elian saw himself as a child. Then he saw a face he didn't recognize, greeting him with warmth. He saw stormy seas, fires, a war never fought yet, felt in the flesh. At the center of the chamber, on an obsidian pedestal, a shard of mirror floated in the air. It reflected nothing but eyes, hundreds, thousands of eyes that changed shape and color every time he stared at them. He felt an irresistible pull. He stepped closer, and for a moment in the shard he saw what he would become if he chose to stay. A guardian of the city, a face among the veils, a whisper in the temple's corridors. He recoiled with a strangled cry. The temple remained still, silent. But something within him had awakened, and it would never sleep again. Chapter 6. The Clock of Bones. As he stepped out of the temple, Elian realized the city had changed, not just in shape, but in breath itself. The air was thicker now, saturated with silent electricity. Every surface felt alive, and the shadows stretched, as if trying to hold him back. Wandering aimlessly, he reached a vast circular plaza. At its center stood a colossal mechanism, a clock built entirely from bone, pure white, interlocked with impossible precision. Its gears turned backward, producing a rhythmic sound like a breath interrupted. Around the clock, 12 motionless figures carved from stone. Their faces were veiled, bandaged. Each statue held a different object: an hourglass filled with ash, an unlit candle, a heart in chains, and more. None of them seemed human. Elian approached, drawn by a voice he couldn't hear with his ears, but that echoed inside him. Each tick of the clock synced with the beat of his heart. When he placed his hand on the central sculpture, one of the statues stirred. Its wrappings unraveled, revealing a face identical to his own. But it wasn't Elian. It was what Elian might have been in another time, another choice. The figure spoke with his voice, but older, more tired. Every time carries its weight. You've broken yours, but the debt remains. Then it pointed to one of the bones in the clock, and it began to bleed. Elian felt himself being emptied. Time around him shattered into overlapping visions, himself, living dozens of different lives in places and roles he had never known. Each vision lasted a heartbeat. Then, silence returned. The clock stopped. The statues crumbled into dust. Elian was alone, but within his chest something had changed. Time, for him, would never move in just one direction again. Chapter 7. The Voices of Stone. The sky above your column had changed. It now resembled a dome of shattered glass, and through its cracks things could be seen, things that did not belong to this world. Elian moved forward in a trance, guided by an ancient pull, a need he didn't know he had. The city's ground grew rougher beneath his feet, as if etched by countless claws. He reached a narrow alley, so tight the walls nearly touched at the top. Carved into the stone were thousands of faces. Human, animal, and impossible hybrids. Each had its mouth open, frozen in a silent scream. As Elian crossed the threshold, the mouths began to speak. There was no sound, but a flood of thoughts poured into his mind. Memories not his own, pain he had never lived, fragments of broken lives. A mother searching for her son in the rubble, a king leaping from a burning tower, a blind man seeing infinity and going mad. Each step was a shard of consciousness, each breath a voiceless scream. Elian fell to his knees, but he couldn't stop. The voices pushed him forward, and at the end of the alley he found a door. Unlike anything else in the city, made of glass and congealed blood, it throbbed like it had a heart. Elian touched it, and a shiver raced down his spine. The door didn't open. It dissolved. Behind it, a staircase descended into the earth. No light, no end. And from the depths, something laughed. Chapter 8. What Waits Below. Elian descended. The staircase seemed to spiral through the belly of the world. Each step was different, some of stone, others of petrified flesh, and others of nothing at all, where the foot would sink but never fall. Darkness was absolute. And yet, he could see, not with his eyes, but with a part of himself he never knew existed. The laughter he had heard did not return, but its echo still vibrated in his bones. It wasn't a human voice. It wasn't even a voice. At the bottom, he found a circular chamber. Its ceiling vanished into shadow. In the center stood an altar, made of broken mirrors and black thorns. Upon it, a hooded figure, still, silent. Elian approached. The figure raised its head. Beneath the hood, his own face. Not just similar, identical, but the eyes. They were filled with dead stars. They spoke without speaking, and Elian understood. There were no answers. Your column was not a place. It was an ancient thought, a knot in time, an echo of forgotten humanity. It existed because it had been imagined, and now he imagined it. The other version of himself extended a hand. In its palm, a spiral, etched deep into the skin. Elian did the same. When their palms touched, the chamber shattered, into light and dust. He awoke in a clearing. The sun shone, birds sang, but nothing was as it had been. The village he once knew bore another name. People looked at him with eyes that did not recognize him. Some skies now had more than one moon. And in his dreams, the city still called. Your column was not behind him. It was inside him. And one day he knew he would return. Not because he wanted to, but because he must. If the veil has whispered to you, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. More secrets await you in the dark.